about what we saw from the LA Clippers last night. Just an absolute, flat-out, catastrophic disaster. And that's not just because they lost. Yes, they were a team with championship expectations that got bounced in the second round. Yes, they have been thrust back so deeply in the Lakers' shadow, they may need a flashlight just to find the court at Staples Center next year. But losing, that's not a sin in itself. You go out there and compete. Sometimes you are going to lose. What is inexcusable is losing without competing. Losing after being up 3-1 with a double-digit lead in each of the series' final games. Losing without scoring a bucket for 7 minutes in the fourth quarter of a Game 7, when you have 2 of the league's top 10 players and have spent an entire year marketing your team with slogans like "driven over given" and "squad over self." Losing after you have spent a big chunk of this restart trash talking. And boy, did that come back to bite this team. Remember Paul George and Patrick Beverley getting into it with the Portland Trailblazers last month, first on the bench, and then on Instagram with Pat Bev saying Portland was destined for a 1-2-3 Cancun type of departure from the bubble? Well, as the Clippers were busy descending into a giant sinkhole last night, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum had a field day on Twitter, offering up invitations to not just Cancun, but several of Mexico's lovelier vacation destinations. First, CJ. Yo, Dame, you got an extra villa available in Cabo? Then Dame directly at Patrick Beverley. I guess I should extend this Cancun invite since I haven't made my arrangements yet. Then CJ, I'll bring the wine. Weather nice as ever, too. And CJ kept going. If they fly private, they can get into Mexico for sure. Should probably get the big jet. This was all just amazing, especially considering that the team that was doing the trash talking lost a whole round earlier than the team they were trash talking to. And that would normally feel hollow, except again, it's not the losing that was the sin. It was whether the Clippers showed any fight or not, a subject the Blazers are indeed experts in. And by the way, so are the Nuggets. Most of the chatter today will be about LA, but no one should imply that Denver was just some lucky band of misfits who just happened to be on the court when the Clippers self-destructed. They have 2 flat-out fantastic players in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and a team spirit that is literally unprecedented. In the 74-year history of the NBA, the Nuggets are the only ones resilient enough to come back from 3-1 series deficits twice in one playoffs. It's remarkable. And after winning last night, Coach Mike Malone credited the way Denver has nurtured its talent and chemistry over the past few years. While at the same time, Clippers coach Doc Rivers was at the opposite podium talking about a lack of trust. Lou Williams went a step further, saying, quote, "We did have championship expectations and the talent to do it. I don't think we had the chemistry to do it, and it showed," unquote. So can the Clippers somehow develop that chemistry for next season? Sure. We have certainly seen teams rebound from big playoff stumbles before. But to do that, they're going to have to not just learn to play together better. They are going to have to show they know how to compete. So far, we have not seen it, and that is more disappointing than anything. Richard, it's sad it's come to this, but it is time for another installment of Blame Pie. Serve it up, please. Who gets the first slice and how large?
Well, personally, I feel like I should get the first slice because I picked them to win a championship, but this is not about me. This is about the Clippers. And the first one to me is Kawhi. We talked about this multiple times. If you have the best player on the floor, and he didn't play like the best player, but he is the best player, reigning Finals MVP, 2-time Finals MVP, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. Everybody's having conversations about not is he the best player in the series, but is he the best player in basketball? And the way he played was very, very disappointing for himself also. So this is not it. But if you have this type of player, you can't have a fourth quarter performance the way you did. Next, it's Paul George and the supporting group. The supporting group, and I'm adding Paul George into the supporting group because Paul George still, he has to continue to prove that we know that he is a top 10 player in the regular season. We've seen it with Giannis. We've seen it with other players. But the way he just struggled at times, and I was sitting right here in that corner when he shot the ball off the side of the backboard, and when I tell you, I turned around and looked, and the entire media session that has watched basketball for 50 years, all's eyes were big like, oh my God, what is happening? So to me, that just lets you know that Paul George and the rest of the crew, and then even you see the contradiction. Paul George says it wasn't championship or bust, and Lou Williams is saying it was championship or bust. So they weren't even locked in on whatever their team message was. So that, to me, shows you that there was a disconnect. And I actually appreciate what Lou Williams said more than what Paul George said in that. And then lastly, Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, who I think is one of the best coaches in leagues. I think he's one of the best player coaches also in all of the entire American sports. He is a great coach, but you cannot have three. There's only been 12 or I think it's 12 times that a team has come back from 3-1 in history, and you got 3 of them, 13 times that teams have come back from 3-1, and you've got 3 of them on your resume. You got almost a quarter of them on your own resume. And
okay, there's a little bit, though, of a sample size issue there. The man has been coaching for 20 years.
Well, but what does that mean? So has Greg Popovich. Right, there's other coaches that have coached. So did Lenny Wilkins.
I understand, but Greg Popovich is probably not the bar that everybody else has to match up.
Doc Rivers knows the amount of respect that I have for him, but ultimately that says something about your inability to make adjustments as the series progresses. Because what happens is this: you knew that this team was able to come back from 3-1 because they had just done it before. So when all of a sudden you're at 3-1 and you see that momentum building, you have to have the ability to make adjustments. And if this has happened for you 3 different times, that means you struggle to make adjustments as the series progresses.
All right, Perk, you like this pie, slices of pie? Do you disagree with any of them?
Well, here's the thing. Kawhi carried the Clippers all through the first round, and part of this series also. He had one bad game. I mean, you can't ask the man to do everything. That's the reason that he's supposed to have a certified Robin and Paul George that I warned everyone about before the season started, that Paul George has a history of disappearing in the playoffs, which he did this past season, which he did this past postseason. And when you look at Paul George in closeout games, he's shooting 33% from the field, 28% from the 3. So did that shot surprise me that he shot it off the side of the backboard? Absolutely not. He always freezes up in the big moments. I thought he was trying to actually pass the ball to some person in the virtual stands. Rachel, wasn't you in the virtual part of the virtual fans yesterday? I seen you drinking the cold one, right? But listen, here's the thing. The Clippers, right? The Clippers are going to break this up. Whether you like it or not, I heard from an inside source, they are going to break this up. They are going to break this up.
Well, listen, Perk. Well, I agree with what you're saying. Like, I'm not talking about how they got to this spot. Obviously, Kawhi played great in the first round. Paul George struggled a little bit in the first round, and he started building off of that. But here in this series, how they played in the first 4 games versus how they played in the last 3, like, we can't give all of this criticism to Giannis, to James Harden, to all these other players. And Kawhi is coming off a great year. We have to start pushing some of this. Like, this is not what, if you're going to give everybody the #1 title, this just can't happen.
And RJ, I'm not saying that Kawhi doesn't deserve some criticism, but look, Lou Will and Montrezl Harrell couldn't guard a parked car last night or in this series. Lou Will was horrible on the offensive end. He was so worried about trademarking his lemon pepper wings that he forgot with his. And that's to provide a bench production. And I'm telling you, like I said before, mark my words, they're going to break this team up. You just bet.
If you believe that that's what they're going to do, Perk, then I 100% trust you. But I just believe that you can build off this. It is a championship or bust, but it's not the group championship or bust. The group can grow. The group can build. They can use this stuff for opportunities for the future.
Look at you guys right now. You disagree, and yet the chemistry and the love and the family is still good. So it can happen. All right, guys, coming up, what was your biggest takeaway from Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals? We're going to